And in other news this weekend, legendary journalist and news pioneer Barbara Walters passed away at 93 years old.
The TV icon worked her way up from writer to be the first female co-host of a morning show, and in 1976 became the first female evening news anchor. Now, during her more than 6 decades in broadcast journalism, she won several major awards, including 12 Emmys, and developed a reputation for one of the medium's most talented interviewers. And at 68 years old, an age where many Americans say, hey, it's time to hang it up, I want to retire. She went on to create and co-host the hit daytime show, The View.
Now, tributes for her have been pouring in all weekend long, including in an Instagram post by Oprah Winfrey, who said her career could not have been possible without Barbara Walters, calling her a trailblazer and a powerful and gracious role model. Before her death, she told ABC News how she would want to be remembered.
I want to be remembered by my daughter as a good and loving mother. I want to be remembered by my friends as somebody who was loyal. I want to be remembered in television, maybe as a creator, maybe as a good newswoman. No, more than being remembered, I hope that by younger women, I can help them aspire.
And that she did. Joining Morning Rush is Steve Battaglio, media reporter for the Los Angeles Times and former ABC News colleague and correspondent and an Emmy Award-winning journalist as well. Jeanne Meserve, thank you so much for joining us and being with us today. So Jeanne, we'll start with you. Barbara Walters was such a trailblazer. What did her work mean to you, coming up through the ranks?
Well, if you see it, you can be it. And she was it. What was amazing to me was her persistence. It is hard for me to impart to you just how sexist broadcast news was at the time when she was blazing her trail. One example, I was interviewing for a job at about that time, and when I told the interviewer I wanted to be a network news correspondent, he looked at me and said, but polling shows the American public only wants to hear news from gray-haired men with glasses. You'll never be that, so give it up. I faced it in that one instance in very stark terms. Barbara must have faced it every single day when she was making her way up the ranks. So I think that is a big part of her legacy. The second part I'd note is her longevity. Yeah. You noted it in the intro. In a business where a lot of women have a sell-by date and are expected to get off the air at a certain age, there are notable exceptions, but the most notable was Barbara, who kept reinventing herself and strengthening her brand well past the date when you might have expected her to retire.
Yeah, it certainly paved the way for a lot of us and continues to for women in journalism. Now, Steve, you have interviewed her several times. What did she say about What did she specifically have to say about her early days of her career and trying to make it as a woman in TV news?
Well, I mean, as Jeanne pointed out, the obstacles seemed insurmountable at the time that she was coming up in the early 1960s. You know, she was the biggest star on TV for a long time. Through the second half of the 1960s, she was absolutely the #1 reason why people were watching the Today Show on NBC. But she did not get that co-host role until 1974. She had it in her contract that if anything happened to the host of the show, Frank McGee, very respected, established journalist at the time, if he left the program involuntarily, she would be named a co-host. Well, it turned out that Frank was ill, and he ended up dying in 1974, and they were forced to give her the co-host role. That's the only reason that she was able to get it. There was such resistance to her, not just because she was a woman, but because she was unique in that she was the first TV news person to straddle the world of entertainment. She was comfortable talking to world leaders, and she was comfortable talking to pop stars and actors and other types of personalities. And that really became the model going forward for TV news. She really created that template. And she even did it again later in her career with The View, with the creation of The View, doing that daytime show, creating that when she was 68 years old. The idea of having women from different backgrounds sit at a table and talk about what's happening now, that also became a template for television. For the number one show on cable news right now is The Five. It's the same thing, really. So Barbara's influence went not just beyond breaking the glass ceiling and creating opportunities for women in broadcasting, but just an innovator in seeing what the business was going to be. She really understood what the public was interested in. She was never above it. She understood celebrities. She understood what people were talking about, and she always was thinking about that audience.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you guys have seen it. You probably have. I mean, you probably watched it live as well. But back in 2014, when Barbara left The View, seeing all the women that she had inspired walking out onto set with her just to say thank you for all that she had done was really moving, just to see that kind of again over the weekend as those tributes were kind of pouring out for her. So, Jeanne, we know that, there were glass ceilings completely shattered by Barbara, and we are so thankful for that. But how was she viewed by the people at ABC News, both men and women, during her time coming up? Because I imagine there may have been a little bit of turmoil, but then you had some cheerleaders as well, maybe silent more times than others.
And so I was at ABC the same time that Barbara was there, but she was in exalted status at that point. I really never worked closely with her, although we met. I never knew her well, but held in tremendous respect by people. Another thing I'd like to mention, though, is that her impact was not only at the network level.
Right.
When she was promoted to be the anchor of a network newscast, which was just astounding. I was working in radio in a little town called Bangor, Maine, and there were no women in the news departments. And within a month of her being promoted to the anchor chair, all three network affiliates had hired women and put them on the air. I was one of them. Thank you, Barbara. It was a great career, and you helped launch it.
Wow. Amazing.
That's amazing. So, Steve, you mentioned something that her impact was that she was really able to interview people ranging from politics to lifestyle, and specifically with her creation of The View, that's a very long-lasting impact. What would you say is something that she kind of created and brought into the world that is still being seen today, and what can people learn from her style of journalism?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, even though Barbara was a groundbreaker for women in broadcasting, she herself was actually kind of criticized in the 1960s for not being outspoken enough about the women's movement. And the reason for that is because she saw herself as a journalist, as a storyteller above everything else. The idea of opinion, which drives so much of TV news today, that was not something that she was interested in. She really kept that wall up. But yeah, but the thing is, she just understood the power of the medium, and she was able to change with it. Her longevity is really a marvel, and that she was able to be around for so long, to have the impact that she had, and you're seeing in the way that she's being remembered this weekend.
All right, Steve and Jeanne, thank you both so much for being here today. It really is just something that's so important to a lot of us, and it's just amazing to hear about her legacy. I really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.